Then Jaina opened herself fully to the Force, drawing it in through the power of her emotions, not through her anger or pain, as a Sith might, but through her love of what her brother had been. The teenage jokester who could always find hope in a desperate situation. The questioning warrior who had bested the Yuuzhan Vong War Master in personal combat. The reluctant champion who had shown a galaxy the way to passionate victory. The Force came pouring in from all sides, saturating Jaina and devouring her, filling her with a roaring maelstrom of power, carrying away her pain and leaving in its place the strength not only to survive, but to rise and fight. Caedus was already on the far side of the conveyor belt, pulling the syringes from his face and shoulder while he staggered towards the exit. Jaina used the Force to depress the control pad, and the door closed in his face. Caedus whirled with fury in his eyes, but Jaina was already bounding over the conveyor belt, her hair still trailing smoke. He splayed his fingers and sprayed Force lightning at her. Jaina caught it on her lightsaber and whirled past, bringing her blade down where Caedus had been an instant before, leaving a long gouge in the door. Caedus's blade snapped to life beside her, a crimson fan whirling towards her shoulders. She dropped and used her free arm to block the Force-driven snap kick she knew he would launch at her throat. Ankle met arm with a sharp crack. What looked like an extra joint appeared in the middle of her forearm. Then her wrist flopped over Caedus's leg, a useless throbbing thing she could no longer control. Jaina whipped her lightsaber around in a high block and deflected the reverse slash Caedus was bringing down towards her neck. She then dived forward, whipping her violet lightsaber at his other foot. Caedus sprang away backward, trying to draw both feet out of harm's way at once and counter by flipping his own weapon around, bringing it underneath her belly. Neither blade cut deep, but both did damage. Jaina felt a searing pain across her abdomen, then felt a terrible uncoiling inside her as something she didn't want to think about bulged into the void left by her slashed muscle. Jaina's blade tapped Caedus behind the boot, touching just long enough to sever the crucial tendon running up the back of the ankle. He landed in an awkward stagger, nearly falling as his foot flapped and flopped without any control. Jaina came to a knee facing him and knew Caedus was about to die. He had one arm and one good leg, and they were not even on the same side of the body. He could not pivot, and he could not retreat. All she needed was to get past his lightsaber and attack the armless side of his body before she herself collapsed, or he recovered long enough to kill her with one last Force blast. Jaina sprang. Caedus tried to turn to meet her, but only staggered, his lightsaber falling to his side as though it were a cane. It wasn't, of course, and his momentum kept him stumbling back toward the bright side of the pit. His eyes filled with rage and exhaustion and despair. Jaina fainted at his head, then began to whirl towards his armless side, bringing her lightsaber around in a flat high slash that he could not hope to block. It was a sure kill, one that would land even if she died first, which she thought she might, since the attack would leave her completely open to an avenging counterstrike. But Caedus seemed to know that Jaina had already killed him, and whatever he had in mind, it was not vengeance. When her blade came around, his lightsaber was still hanging at his side. He was staring up towards the ceiling, his gaze fixed somewhere far beyond the murk overhead, and the only attempt he made to save himself was to take one step back into the light spilling from the furnace. It would not be enough, Jaina knew. She closed her eyes and felt the lightsaber sink in, felt it slicing between his ribs, into his cage, into his chest. And Jaina felt something in the Force too. Something that made her pulse stop and her chest sink and her blood freeze in her veins. Her brother was reaching out to Tenel Ka, screaming at her through the Force, warning her that there was danger, urging her to take her daughter, Alana, and... Then the blade reached Caedus's heart, and he dropped at her feet, and Jaina felt nothing at all.